Hello, let's talk about The Code Breaker, Jennifer Doudna, Gene Editing and the Future of the Human Race by Walter Isaacson, former editor of Time, author of the authorized biography of Steve Jobs with that iconic cover, which is probably iconic because Steve Jobs had the one thing he wanted approval on was the cover, the packaging of this authorized biography. So yes, this is a 2021 nonfiction science biography book. Probably more science book than it is really a biography, but I'll get into that. So, American biochemist Jennifer Doudna, born in 1964, along with her colleague Emmanuelle Charpentier, showed in 2012 that this naturally occurring process in bacteria used to fight off viruses can be used to much more easily edit DNA in plants and animals. This is called this kind of family of DNA is called CRISPR, which is clustered, regularly interspersed, short palindromic repeats. I do not have that in my head, and most likely I will only remember CRISPR. And I wouldn't blame you if that's the only thing that you particularly remember by the end of this little review by an English major. So in, CRISPR is revolutionary because instead of Doudna's kind of explains this as instead of rewiring the computer every time you want to change the program, CRISPR itself it's simply the program. So this book, as I said, isn't a biography of Jennifer Doudna. What she is the central figure that Isaacson uses to take you through the long history and kind of the multi-character story about what leads to the jump forward in gene editing and what might come next. So I think in the modern era, where it starts off very much with James Watson and Crick. James Watson's book, The Double Helix, inspires Jennifer Doudna to get into science. Now, this is a book which does describe one of his fellow collaborators, Rosalind Franklin, who it's now acknowledged wasn't properly acknowledged at what her contribution was. And indeed, Watson in his book seems to be, from what's reported by Isaacson, is rather condescending to her. And that kind of theme of how female scientists continue to be treated, even to our modern day, is one of these themes that gets braided through the book. So yeah, this is very much a depiction of modern science and how all the collaborations and competition that happens between scientists. It's very much not one isolated scientist alone in a laboratory who is doing everything. These are giant teams of people here. Whether it's like just in one organization or just the multi-organizations, all kind of going to get together to actually crack the code, as it was. So a part of this thing is as Isaacson takes you kind of step by step through the science, which sometimes can be a little bit overwhelming if you're a English major. It takes you through the science because a part of it is about how the credit is given, how one person came up with this idea, which built on this idea, and within that's like how we're going to how credit is going to be given, who's going to win the Nobel Prize. Doudna and Charpentier win the Nobel Prize in 2020 in biochemistry for this discovery of CRISPR, but there's also patents involved, and patents are filed. And indeed, after CRISPR is discovered, there are competing patents for this, and there are lawsuits, and sometimes there's kind of hurt feelings about who is cut out or not. There is definitely an effort in here at one point during one of these patent battles to downplay Doudna's role in this, to say, oh, she made a contribution, but it's like she to try and kind of knock her down in the listing, and stuff like that. So which is all really kind of is fascinating. Now, after all this, we also get into how are we going to use this new tool? Where Dudna herself continues to take a role, maybe more than Charpentier, which is why maybe Isaacson, other than being a fellow American, focuses on her. She very much leads a call for prudence in how we're going to use this new gene technology, because you can use it to edit plants and animals and very much humans, and you can use it just for a single patient, but it also has the potential of you can edit embryos, and that those embryos will become people who will pass on whatever traits you've inserted into it to future generations. There's some definitely very cautionary notes in here. There is a Chinese scientist who takes this new technology and blunders forward without proper oversight, basically kind of goes rogue, and uses it for a non-medically necessary thing of trying to make children of where one parent is HIV positive, to make them HIV resistant, where there's the existing technology. You could wash the father's HIV contribution away from sperm, and that would be perfectly fine. It was not medically necessary, and indeed it was very much a botched job, and there's a couple of children out there now who have to live with the consequences of that. However, that messing with their DNA, that's just, it's horrendous. And there is also the thing that comes up as James Watson comes back up in this conversation as someone who is very much older, but has kind of, he's very cavalier about, oh no, we shouldn't put any restrictions on it. We should just let everybody do whatever the heck they want. And also possessing kind of racist attitudes, kind of calling back to, the history of, at certain points in our culture, we've had some really wrong-headed ideas, and you can see like kind of eugenic movements, that's something where it could be easily used in ways that would horrify us now. And what is it going to do to future generations? And I mean, if you're editing humans and making that heritable, that is something you do now that lasts for as long as their offspring from those people. So it's a rather awe-inspiring amount of responsibility and care that needs to be taken, and who gets to make the decisions on that. One of the other things here is, like, there's calls from communities that aren't valued by mainstream society. One of them, I think this is outside of the book, the deaf community, saying, like, they've inherited death through many generations, deafness through many generations of families. And it's like, there's the kind of the threat now of, like, we're going to be edited out of existence. That's possibly, that's one of these things that, who's going to make the decision on what's desirable. And at the same time, there's so many promises that get put out in this field. Some stuff like sickle cell anemia, Huntington's disease, possibilities of using something like CRISPR for, against cancers, developing new antibiotics, disease diagnosis, and much, much more. It seems like this is as much as anything is likened to, like, like the birth of, like, the microchip and the kind of the tech revolution. This is the biotech revolution happening here, and it's going to probably change our lives in ways that are potentially far ranging than like the tech thing with, someone like maybe like Steve Jobs was a part of. In the end, Isaacson does a really great job of marshaling this very complex story, using Dudna as a central figure. I mean, it is very, obviously it's a very American focus. It's telling this from an American perspective, also with kind of American values. And very much there is a thing here of, like, individual choice versus societal choice. And, Isaacson may become a little bit more on the individual choice. So it's a book that is great in that it's opened up a whole new area for me to kind of look at and want to hear different voices on this discussion. And I mean, that's one of these things of like, you can see that why using Dudna as a central figure from her being aware of her roots in this science going back, Watson, and further back, but also her having this kind of feeling of kind of a moral responsibility to need to push for responsible and worldwide debate on what are the uses of this technology that she has helped found. I think one thing that because I had some sleepless nights in finishing this book, but the one thing to probably keep in mind is that Dudna herself is talking a lot about focusing on stuff where it's like, okay, it's one particular flaw or quirk in DNA that we can alter to help something like maybe sickle cell anemia, that is, and is blood based. That is where they're focusing right now, because it's just like how complex DNA is. I think we've finally kind of broken away from that. We're going to find we're going to find the gay gene, or we're going to find the intelligence gene, or we're going to find the beauty gene. We know that all this stuff is so complex, and we're only at the very kind of infancy of refining and making the editing actually much more delicate kind of procedure. Even though that CRISPR is amazing as is, it's obviously it's still developing and developing. There's also just like the behavior of DNA. It's like what consequences does doing just one change do, or how many changes or how many things you would have to do to make a designer baby. That may be coming. So it's one of these worthwhile things to be thinking about right now and having discussions about right now, trying to get ready. I don't know if we're ever going to be ready. I don't know, for all the technology that human beings have gotten, I don't know if we've ever been ready. It's probably going to be as messy and chaotic, and there's going to be as much bad as there is good. But it's really, you can see that this is really an important conversation to have, really important things to think about going forward, and just how significant of an influence gene editing has already had on many people's lives already pre-CRISPR, how much more that is going to happen now. So yeah, that is The Code Breaker, Jennifer Doudna, Gene Editing and the Future of the Human Race by Walter Isaacson. It's a 2021 book, and I would highly recommend picking it up if any of this stuff is stuff that you're interested in. As an English major, I was able to get through the science, and as a citizen of the planet, I think it's definitely one of these important books, an important book to read. All right, more videos later.